Okay, by my unofficial count, it does appear that we have a quorum. So let me open the meeting and call it to order. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the April 2023 Brooklyn Borough Board meeting. The meeting is being recorded to comply with the Open Meetings Law, and it is being conducted remotely based on authority under the Public Officers Law, Section 103-A, with the ongoing state of emergency related to COVID-19. I will now turn it over to my colleague, the Director of Community Boards here at the Office of Brooklyn Borough President, Carol Ann Church, to call the roll of this Borough Board meeting.
Good evening, everyone. Nice to see you all. And we'll start with Community Board 1.
Yeah.
Community Board 2. Community Board 3.
Anthony Buser is present.
Community Board 4.
Presente.
Community Board 5. Community Board 6.
Eric McClure, Chair, present.
Community Board 7.
Cindy Vandenbosch, First Vice Chair, present.
Thank you. Community Board 8.
Here's the Weatherspoon Chair, present.
Community Board 9.
Roberti, CB9 Chair, present.
Community Board 10.
Jane Kapitanakis, Chair, present.
Community Board 11.
Manuel Lau, present. I'm present.
Thank you. I got you. Thank you. Community Board 12. Community Board 13.
Lucy Mojica, DSCB 13 Chair. In addition, my first Vice Chair, Jeff Sanoff, and my second Vice Chair, Zanara Ebnedak.
Thank you. Community Board 14.
Good evening, Joanne Brown, Chair, present.
Community Board 15.
Lisa Scavo, Chair, present.
Community Board 16.
Janice Morgan, Chair, present.
Community Board 17. Community Board 18. Okay, great turnout from our community boards. Council members, Council District 33, Wrestler. Council District 34. Council District 35. Council District 36. Council District 37. Council District 38.
Edward Cerna on behalf of Councilmember Alexa Aviles.
Thank you. Council District 39. Council District 40.
I take one comment here on behalf of Councilmember Joseph.
Council District 41. Council District 42. Council District 43.
Michael Shelvin here for Councilmember Justin Brannon.
Council District 44. Council District 45.
Daniel Heredia, representing Councilmember Farrah Lewis.
Council District 46.
Hi, Sai Joseph, representing Councilmember Narcisse.
Council District 47. Council District 48. Borough President's Office is present.
Thank you very much, Ms. Church.
We have 18 without counting the borough presidents in attendance. And I see Miss Loman.
Yes.
Ward 5.
Thank you.
Hey.
Okay, having a quorum, one over the quorum, not counting our office, we may proceed to action items. The first action item is approval of the agenda that was circulated by an email dated March 31st, 2023. Did anyone on the call today, any representative of community board or council member's office, not receive a copy of the agenda? Hearing none, hearing that no one failed to receive a copy of the agenda, any objections to adopting the agenda? Hearing no objections, the agenda is adopted. And next action item would be the adoption of the proposed minutes for the March 2023 Borough Board meeting. In that same March 31st email I referenced, a copy of proposed minutes for the March 2023 Brooklyn Borough Board meeting a copy was distributed. Did anyone not receive a copy of the proposed March 2023 minutes?
Point of order, that's March 1st, 2023.
Yes, the minutes for the March 2023 Borough Board meeting that took place on March 1st, 2023. Anyone not receive a copy of the proposed minutes? Hearing that no one failed to receive a copy, does anyone object to the adoption of the proposed minutes as the official minutes of the March 2023 Brooklyn Borough Board meeting? Chairperson Brown.
Thank you very much. I have a correction for these minutes. Under Community Board Chairpersons, Joanne Brown, CB14, was admitted and omitted from these minutes as an attendee. Thank you.
Any objections to amending the minutes to add that Joanne Brown, Chairperson of Community Ward 14, attended the March 2023 Brooklyn Borough Board meeting? Chairperson Witherspoon, do you have your hand up to object, just to be clear, or is this on another matter?
This is another matter. Thank you.
Hearing no objection, the proposed minutes are deemed amended, adding that Chairperson Joanne Brown, Chairperson of Community Board 14, was in attendance. Chairperson Witherspoon, do you have anything else regarding the adoption of the minutes? I'd ask for objections.
Yes, under CB8, it's an incomplete statement. It's a sentence that's hanging where it's listed at the very end, want BH2. So I'm not sure what thought that was. I don't think it was mine, but I just wanted to bring your attention to it.
So is this page?
It's under the chair boards.
I see. Yeah. So page 4.
Three.
It should be responsive to the boards. Want BH2.
I believe that was to mediate getting the agency, to facilitate getting the agency to attend the meeting.
Thank you.
Any objection to a second amendment to the proposed minutes, adding after the word to, mediate getting the agency to attend the borough board? Adding that language. Hearing no objection, the proposed minutes are amended to add the words to mediate getting the agency to attend the Borough Board meetings. As amended, both adding Chairperson Brown's attendance and completing the sentence about what CB8 said. Are there any objections to adopting the proposed minutes as amended? Hearing no further objections, the proposed minutes are adopted as the official minutes of the March 2023 Brooklyn Borough Board meeting, which now brings us to our next agenda item, which is a presentation from a familiar face, Benjamin Solitaire, a community board advisor with the New York City Civic Engagement Condition. Is Benjamin on? Benjamin on?
I don't see him.
Any objections to switching the action item of the presentation from Benjamin Solitaire with agenda item 4 and moving on to the updates? Is there any objection around the updates, switching the order? Hearing no objections, we'll now have updates from the council members and actually, I'll take that. I'll take that back. I believe we just have updates. Beginning with Brooklyn Borough Hall, and we have 4 updates for you. The first update is that community board appointments will be announced shortly. We are wrapping up the final steps, but we want to note that we are awaiting recommendations from council members to complete the process. So for council members and representatives of council member offices on this call, if you've not gotten in your recommendations, please do so that we can make the community board announcements. A connected reminder with that process, and this is also directed to council members, offices and staffs, that the personal information in the Airtable is confidential and should not be shared. In the memorandum circulated in connection with this, there are city privacy law considerations, so we must ensure that the information shared on Airtable is confidential and remains so by not being shared. The third announcement or update is tomorrow, Wednesday, the Ramadan fast is going to be broken, and the Office of Brooklyn Borough President will be selling iftar with the Islamic communities of Brooklyn. You're welcome, and please attend. Finally, the Borough President made a formal announcement on Friday when we introduced the staff, so we are happy to share this with you all. And this announcement is that the Borough President's Office, effective April 17th, has appointed a new Deputy Borough President. The new Deputy Borough President is the Reverend Kimberly Council, familiar to many people around Brooklyn, and especially those in the North Brooklyn communities. Again, Reverend Kimberly Council has been appointed the Borough President's new Deputy Borough President, effective April 17th. We're very excited about this appointment, and that is all from our end. Any updates from any other members of the Borough Board? Chairperson Brown, Community Board 14.
Hi, thank you very much. I'll be brief. I just wanted to report out that yesterday we had our annual youth conference. It was hosted by Brooklyn College Student Union. It was a wonderful day. We had over 740 youth register for our event and over 60 agencies present with workshops and mock interviews. It was an excellent turnout. I feel from my observations that the youth in attendance got a lot out of the event, and I just wanted to report out about that success. And I also would just want to thank our office staff, and also District Manager Sean Campbell for really organizing an incredible day. And then lastly, our general meeting will be on April 17th, the Monday. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson Brown. Chairperson Baptiste, Community Board 9.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Not so much an update on my side, but I did have a question for the Borough President, if you're taking questions now, or I can do it later on.
Please hold off to new business.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson Baptiste. Chairperson Mujica Diaz of Community Board 13.
Good evening, everyone. CB 13 in conjunction with Luna Park had the grand opening this weekend. Many elected officials wouldn't attend these, so we thank you all that came out. But following that, we will be having our second public forum regarding the proposed casino coming to our district on April 19th. I will ask my district manager to send all district managers the flyer. While it's in our district, my personal opinion that it affects all Brooklyn. The developers have, excuse me, I'm getting my words all confused. I wasn't ready. The developers have selected the location of Gargiulio's restaurant on 15th Street, and it will be at 6 p.m. Our last forum, we had about 300 people with the blessing of the borough president and conducting the forum, not the blessing of the casino. Don't get my words twisted with that. I see Gregory smiling over there saying, don't say that. But the objection to many of the residents were no casino, as what I'm hearing in many of the districts. We're hoping that will possibly be the same turnout, and our elected officials will listen to the constituents, not among themselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson Mujica Diaz. Chairperson McClure, Community Board 6, recognized.
Thanks. I just wanted to report the sad news that Tom Miskell, who is a longtime member of Community Board 6, a long-serving trustee and past president of the Park Slope Civic Council, passed away last week at the age of 79. Tom was a fixture in Park Slope and around the district, and I just wanted to note his passing. Some of you may have encountered Tom along the way over the years. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson McClure, and let us have a brief acknowledgement. Thank you. Any other updates?
Hi, this is Moose from Councilmember Hanif's office. I joined a bit late after attendance, so I just wanted to state for the record that I'm present on behalf of the council member.
Thank you very much. And Ms. Church, do we have the form? Thank you. Just want to make sure. Any other updates? All right. The vote had been to move the presentation from Benjamin Solitaire, the Community Board Advisor on the Civic Engagement Commission, down to this item, moving on with the agenda. Is Benjamin on? Shall we move the agenda item further down and move up the presentation? Is there any objection to making that switch again? Hearing no objection, we now move on to the next agenda item, which is the Brooklyn Comprehensive Plan presented by Aaron Buchanan. Actually, I believe still the Deputy Director of Land Use at the Office of Brooklyn Borough President. Please proceed. Is Aaron on?
I'm here.
All right, Aaron, please proceed. I believe you have half an hour to present, and we'll then take questions.
Okay, great. Thank you. My WebEx is having a little bit of a meltdown. I will see if I can successfully share the slides. Okay, can you see?
Yep.
Okay, great. I'm not gonna change it to like screen mode, so apologies. I just don't want it to have an additional hiccup. So thank you so much for giving me some time in this agenda. I'm really excited to share an update with you all on the comp plan. I know that we have been to this body before to give you all an update. So I'm really excited to be back here talking a little bit about what we've been up to. So I'll start at the beginning very briefly, just to catch anyone up who hasn't been involved yet to this point. But a comprehensive plan is a guiding document for community stakeholders, and it has a bunch of different ways that people try to get at implementing the goals of the plan that's set for a certain community. So the way that we hope to use our comprehensive plan is to guide the borough president's land use decisions and recommendations, to provide accountability and predictability for the public for the BP's land use decisions, kind of knowing where he's coming from when he issues recommendations, and then also to share a lot of the critical data that we've collected as part of the existing conditions of this plan with anyone who is all excited and nerdy about data like we are. A few things that are very important with this plan is it's not a substitution for any citywide comprehensive plan. It's also not a substitute for local ongoing planning efforts that I know many boards and also some council districts have undertaken over the years. It is currently not complete or finished. We're still very much in process, and it's also not a rezoning. Some reminders on what the borough president's power and responsibilities are. He issues ULURP recommendations as part of his role in that process. He can also sponsor and introduce legislation in partnership with council members. He has a budget and can set those priorities and allocations across the borough, monitor and modify delivery of city services. He is also a convener across Brooklyn, across different bodies, and he also thinks through strategic planning for the borough. So talking a little bit more about health and housing and why we're thinking about our comprehensive plan through this lens. So what led us down this path is that we just kept seeing these stark disparities in health outcomes across the borough as it relates to race and income. And this is our opportunity to think about how land use changes and a land use framework can help achieve some public health outcomes to address some of the disparities that we're seeing. And on that, there is a growing body of research that shows that social and economic determinants of health are really affected by things like the location of affordable housing, how accessible communities are to transit and the reliability and quality of those transit services, and also the accessibility to public services and amenities for communities. So just a recap on existing conditions and where we are. So we first started off by establishing an advisory committee, and that has about 25 members, nonprofits, some city agencies, health professionals, planning groups to help kind of guide this process. We held a town hall to talk about the existing conditions, and then from there we had an online form for additional feedback on the existing conditions. We have also been to you all, presented to the Borough Board, and also to the Borough Service Cabinet. We engaged with other critical stakeholders through this process, and then our outreach partner is Hester Street, and they've been helping us with some focus groups on specific topics and will continue to help us get the word out as we move forward with recommendations. And this is just a quick capture of a few things, with a lot of maps, our feedback form, and some press. The BP has been out there talking very excitedly about comp plan. Okay, great. So moving on from existing conditions, we have been looking at the data and using that to establish our emerging goals. And then thinking through the objectives, recommendations, and metrics for which we want to measure success by, based on the data and the input that we've heard so far. And then we also are thinking about this spatially. So not only do we have these recommendations, but we want to be able to think through them in this land use framework. So in my next few slides, I'll go through some sample, I'll go through the goals first, and then some sample ways that we're hoping this can play out throughout the final plan, and then some examples of how we see those things overlaying spatially. So I'll quickly go through the goals that we have kind of distilled from all the information that we have gathered so far. So the first is addressing the environment, reduce hazardous environmental conditions, including those exacerbated by climate change that affect our most vulnerable populations. Really addressing healthcare, since the overall goal is to improve public health outcomes, so increase access to quality, affordable healthcare. In housing, increase access to safe and healthy, affordable housing. Active living in transit, encourage active living as a way to reduce chronic diseases across communities. In community, increase and support social resiliency and availability of community services in neighborhoods that we're seeing particularly stark health disparities. And in the economy, increase access to employment opportunities and support pathways to well-paying jobs. And then finally, making sure that we're integrating planning for accessibility in all of the decisions. So under the first goal for environment, a sample objective that we're looking at is to protect vulnerable populations from high heat. And you'll see in these coming slides that we'll have accompanying maps to show, how we arrived here and thinking through them. So some recommendations to address high heat is increasing open space in these communities where we're seeing a high heat vulnerability index. Interventions like splash parks, increasing tree cover, expanding access to air conditioning, cooling centers, things like that. And then a metric by which we can measure is to reduce the heat vulnerability index for community boards with high heat. A sample under healthcare is to remove barriers to healthcare. And the map on the right is just showing areas where we're seeing lower life expectancy, where we would want to focus some of these recommendations. So citing new healthcare facilities and mixed use projects in ULURP is a way to ensure more equitable access to healthcare. Making sure that Department of Health outreach materials are available in multiple languages so that all populations can access the care that they need. Increasing transportation access through building the IBX, which I'll talk a little bit more about later, but making sure that everyone can get to these safety net hospitals if they need them. And then a metric would be increasing the number of residents living in accessible transit distance of those hospitals. And then finally, another sample goal under active living and transit is to strengthen our cycling and pedestrian infrastructure. The map on the right is showing locations where pedestrians have been injured and killed, and where some enhanced crossings and neighborhood slow zones have been in effect. Some other recommendations that we're looking at are to close gaps in a protected bike network to make cycling safely across different parts of the borough, expanding open streets. In our ULURP recommendations, making sure that developers are providing parking and other facilities that more easily encourage cycling. And a few metrics that we're looking at are building bike lanes as indicated in the NYC Streets Plan, and then looking at how we can decrease cyclist injuries, serious injuries, and deaths through these interventions. And then this next part I'll go through quickly is how we want to see some of these recommendations play out more spatially. So we've looked at them through these 4 areas: housing growth and parking demand management, health and wellness economy, healthy streets and environment, and green waterfront economy. So the next few slides are about housing and parking. So this map on the right is showing where we have seen new residential units constructed between 2010 and 2020. So you can see the heavy concentration in the northern half of the borough, And part of this would be looking at encouraging housing in community districts where production hasn't necessarily kept pace with population growth over the last decade. And along those same lines, encouraging housing near transit within a half mile. As we know, the research shows that it is more effective to do development around existing transit. So we really want to focus on where transit exists. And then again, the IBX corridor keeps coming up in all of our recommendations as kind of a really nice way to think about how we can add that additional transit and then think about housing around that as well. And then a few notes on parking. The city isn't creating new on-street parking. Our streets are our streets. So the goal there is just to encourage folks to use transit rather than their private vehicles. But we know that if they don't have another alternative, the vehicle is what they've got. So providing convenient alternatives is very important. And then again, concentrating development along transit lines to help reduce the demand for new parking and introducing new vehicles into the very crowded streets that we've already got. This is just a list of some interventions that have been tested in other cities, some things we're thinking about here to think about parking demand management. So parking cash out, which is kind of like a commuter benefit to get people out of their cars and using transit. Wayfinding, making sure people know where off-street parking is. Park and ride options, residential parking permits, which we've been hearing a lot about lately. Unbundling parking costs from rent to make sure that those who don't have vehicles aren't carrying the burden of paying for parking that they don't need or use. Shared parking facilities, shared parking systems, and then of course talking about how we can reduce or eliminate parking minimums, and then overflow parking for things like events. Moving on to health and wellness economy. So the map on the right is showing not only the safety net hospitals in pink with the circles around them, but also areas where folks have reported higher numbers of bad mental health days. So when we're thinking about health and wellness, we want to look at that, but we also want to think through where the disparities in life expectancy are, the map that was in a prior slide, and that will guide how we're thinking about recommendations for these areas. So we want to be sure that we're planning for the healthcare and education workers, which I'll also talk about in the next slide. Thinking about additional and improved active and passive open space, making sure folks have access to medical care, and encouraging a wellness economy. So about half of Brooklyn residents work in the healthcare and education industries, which is so many. And we're seeing that a significant amount of workers in these fields don't have reliable access to mass transit. And again, the IBX is coming up as a way that we can help people get to and from their jobs and increase transit options rather than driving. On healthy streets and environment, the map is showing some Vision Zero priority areas, some corridors. In pink is the PM 2.5 concentration. So you can see it's kind of along the BQE and in our industrial areas. Also some chemical storage, some toxic sites or Superfund sites. So these are all kind of coming together on this map and helping us think through how we want to create safer streets and a safer experience on the street. So not only, as I talked about, pedestrian and cyclist interventions before, but thinking creatively and innovatively about the public realm and what open space interventions we can have there and prioritizing bus lane construction. This is just another data point about healthy streets in the environment, our PM 2.5 concentration, which we know is very dangerous, especially for those with asthma, can worsen other illnesses, heart conditions, and we're seeing concentrations along the BQE and in EJ areas. And I think an important note here is that there isn't a single place in the borough where the 2.5 level is at an acceptable level per the World Health Organization. So some areas are much worse than others, but the whole borough does have some work to do in addressing our dangerous air quality. And then on green waterfront, we would be remiss not to talk about the Army Corps HATS study, which I know has been they've been making their way around, briefing different groups, but it is our once in a generation opportunity to think about how we want to protect our communities from flooding in the future. Obviously, will require tons of community input and engagement to think about design guidelines for soft edges and accessibility, making sure that we can be protected, but also enjoy the waterfront. Also thinking about industrial job growth, freight, and how we can encourage career pathways through those areas. And then we've also really been thinking about the wind energy economy, since New York does have a competitive advantage with the shelf off Long Island. That would also help kind of reinforce this marine and rail-based freight to get trucks off the road, which would help address the air pollution issues. And then also thinking through the supply chain for wind energy, how we can really bring all of that together to have the manufacturing component here as well to make our waterfronts continue to be working and vibrant industrial areas. The next few slides are all about IBX and how we can look at that as an economic growth intervention and reducing some of these health disparities at the same time. So as I said before, getting people out of private cars is tied to a reduction in obesity rates. And we can see where some higher concentrations of obesity occur in the borough, and the IBX line is going right through a big chunk of that. And then you can see in this map where the higher concentrations of vehicle miles traveled are all near or south of the IBX line. So this will help reduce our commute times, car traffic, improve air quality, and access to opportunity through jobs. So we're seeing kind of multiple traffic and air quality and economic opportunity issues addressed through that. And then finally, as it relates to residential growth, this would be an additional opportunity to see where new housing might be appropriate based on this additional transit line, help us with some redundancy if buses are out of service, and then be this really important connection to waterborne freight, and then also rail freight, again, to help with the trucks off the road. Okay, great. So thank you for being so patient as I went through all of that, and the next few slides are just a quick wrap up, just where we are. So we're in phase 2 now with briefing all of the boards, and Hester Street will help us hold some community conversations for some additional feedback. In May, we're hoping to have a town hall to introduce the BP's recommendations. Then we'll finalize them and then think through implementation, how we use them in our ULIP recommendation, who we share them with, how we update them, and then what metrics we'll look at to help research our outcomes. So again, we're looking to have the town hall the week of May 15th, and we'll also have a digital tool. We hope to have the link this week, so we'll be sure to send it to all of the boards where you can download the full list of our draft recommendations, because this was just a smattering for today because we couldn't take all of your evening. So look for that. We'll be sending it out. I'll have Caroline send it out when it's ready. And are there any quick questions? I'm not sure how much time I have, but I will stop sharing, and if there are any questions within the time, I'd be happy to take any.
Thank you, Erin. The time was just for the presentation. This questions are as many as the members would like. So I believe the first question is with Vice Chair Sanoff with Community Board 13.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everybody. I have a question, Erin, if I may call you Erin.
Please.
About the health and wellness issues. I live in Brighton Beach, near Coney Island. We have an iconic boardwalk there. And I don't know if you are in conversations with the Parks Department, but they want to put a plastic covering over concrete in certain areas. And this will create heat islands. And heat islands are not good for the community. It will create pulmonary and heart ailments and other conditions. Is this part of the conversations you have with parks? Because we wanted to get in our community board a study on the effects of heat islands, and Parks Department is not, really responsive to this.
Sure. Thank you for bringing that up. I'm not familiar with that. I haven't heard this yet. If you wouldn't mind, I would love to talk with you a little bit more about it, like with these locations where they're thinking about it, but we haven't spoken to parks. But I would be happy to have a conversation with you and see if we can speak with them about it. So thank you for raising that.
Okay, I will definitely get in touch with you.
Okay. Do you have my email? I can either send it to you or Caroline can.
Okay, send it to me. My email is sanoffj@aol.com.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, you're muted.
Chairperson Baptiste, Community Board 9. Please, I apologize.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. All right. So I guess I have two questions. I just want, in terms of understanding, so what the end product of this is going to be. Are we going to have a framework that is done on the district level? So we'll say for Community Board 9, these are the recommendations for any land use, and will it be done on a district level, or is this going to be a borough-wide framework in terms of these are the priorities?
It'll be a borough-wide framework. There will be some areas where you'll be able to see like specific districts highlighted. Like for example, let's see, like the heat index map has a few districts that are very much that show up higher than others, and there might be some recommendations that cite, high heat areas specifically, and then of course the data will reflect for community boards, but in general, it'll be a broader framework, and then these different the different recommendations that fall within those can apply to the different boards as relevant. So it won't be a list of like Community Board 1, here are the recommendations, Community Board 2. So there might be some cross, referencing that would apply to multiple boards. But yes, in general, more of a framework rather than a district by district sort of outline.
Okay, and if I could, a second question. So with regards to the timeframes, if I saw correctly, I saw that there's a draft recommendations. I think town halls on around May 15th. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And then there's an online tool that closes by 5/31.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. In terms of the end of this, is there an engagement back with the boards at the end of it, or is there a borough board vote, or what happens with that? And I note that especially because if we're talking about the tool closes by May 31st, many of us go on hiatus that next month, after that next month.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of when is it expected that this would be completed, and what's the, how do we wrap this up, or how is it implemented, or what's the authority to implement these things?
Sure. So I'll take those in order. So yes, May 15th, we want to have the town hall. Week of May 15th, we want to have the town hall just to give people an opportunity to engage with this in a different way. It doesn't mean that the digital tool link will only be up from May 15th to May 31st. We hope to get that to you this week, so you'll be able to circulate it to your community as much earlier than that. And then That tool will close the 31st to give us the next few weeks to make sure we're incorporating all of the comments into what will be the final plan. So we'll probably take through mid-June and want to get this out before the summer. So it won't be, you know, May 31st, the next day we'll release the final plan because we hope to have a ton of feedback that we'll need to comb through and incorporate. And then there won't need to be a vote or anything like that. It's just released for anyone who wants to look at it and use it.
Chairperson Camacho, Community Board 4.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned. Is there going to be a safety aspect in regards to bike activity? Because I see you put that to make sure that people don't use their vehicles or residential parking if possible for people that are seniors with disability that really need to use their cars. A lot of people ain't riding their bikes, especially old timers like me, ain't riding no bike anytime soon. And if we are, we're willing to work, but there's got to be a safety aspect in it, meaning applying the rules and regulation of the road if possible. I don't know where you guys see that getting rid of cars solves a lot of problems. I don't know where is it that the truck aspect that we have here on Bushwick Avenue, you're 100% right. We have trucks and constructions that are keep coming in and knocking out the 2 and 3 family homes and driving around with tractor trailers with cement trucks in there. Maybe that'll help the air. I think I can do each block is different, community is different in its own way, but one, I would like to know what's the safety in regards to bikes. I know in my hand they got lights that they can stop. I know in Bushwick they don't have anything. They go one way, up way, one way. In regards to scooters, electrical scooters, so now you want to get rid of our cars, but you want to hit scooters, electrical scooters that are starting fires in people's home with their batteries. So I don't know. Sometimes I wonder when I hear you guys talk about getting rid of my car, and we employed a lot of people. We pay for license, insurance, gas. We got jobs for mechanics. We buy parts. So I don't know how that's gonna work. So I wanted to see what ideas you guys have in regards to residential parking and making sure I own my home for 40 years. When I come home, I have a parking spot in front. Not people from Jersey and Pennsylvania or other places. I don't know what it is that you guys are trying to do, but I know it might not work in my district, but we really need to find out what is it that because if it was in the real world where I can get rid of all the cars, we would have did it a long time ago. Back then we couldn't afford cars. All of a sudden now we could. So I know what's going on. Maybe you can fill me in on what is it that you guys want. How is it that you want to do to work, especially with the people in a community like ours in Bushwick?
I think this is exactly the kind of feedback and questions that we're looking for. When the recommendation draft tool comes out, and you can also submit like comments to me directly or to John, who's also on my team. But I think if you have concerns or ideas about things like the residential parking permit, if you think that would work for Bushwick, if you have ideas about how it could be implemented, other places you've seen it work, those are the types of things that we want to hear from you. If you think like, yes, this could be a solution for the traffic issue in Bushwick. I do like the idea of a residential parking permit system for these reasons, and this is how I could see it working. That's exactly what we're looking for, that type of feedback.
And in regards to the safety aspect where bikes, in regards to rules of the road, you know why people buy bikes, right? Because they get to the places faster because they don't have to stop at the light. And also they can go whatever way they want to if traffic is there. So they don't ride it because it's healthy. They ride it because they can get from point A to point B faster than getting out of car and staying stuck in traffic and wasting money. I was a biker, so I know what it's like. And I went from one end to another, and that saved me a lot of money. So
Yeah, so we can look into thinking through the cyclist safety, and I'm guessing you're meaning a little more on the enforcement side, like how to make sure that cyclists are cycling safely. I don't want to put words in your mouth. I'm just trying to clarify.
I don't think it's a safety. They know what they have to do. It got nothing to do with enforcement because a lot of people want to get rid of the cops. So I'm just saying, in general, how is it that we're gonna create an environment? Because I know in Manhattan they got lights. So in my hood they don't have lights. There's lights in Manhattan that they can stop when the light is green, and they got their own parking space. They got their own stuff. But I know in Bushwick we don't have lights. So
Okay. That makes sense. I'll take that back. Thank you.
Chairperson Scavo, CV 15.
Yes, thank you, Erin. That was very informative. In one of your early slides, you mentioned shared data. What would be included in that data? Also, it seems to me, having seen the entire presentation, I'm not hearing anything about senior citizens. Everything seems to be geared to younger people hopping on a bike, traversing the city of New York. What about senior citizens that maybe need a car to access doctors, grocery shopping? I don't envision seniors hopping on a bus or a train with grocery bags. So do you have intentions of including seniors in your report?
Yes, thank you. I'll start with your second question. So the reason we didn't go through all of the recommendations is because it just would have taken so long. And that's why we just selected a few to kind of show what you can expect in the recommendations document. So it's not that these are the only things we're looking at. It's just this was a sample of kind of how we're formatting, how we're thinking about it, the ways that we can think through things, both from like a policy, from a spatial perspective, from an advocacy perspective. So it's not that we're not thinking about seniors. It just wasn't one of the samples that we selected to talk through tonight. But yes, that is definitely part of it. And if there is anything else when the draft gets live on the link that we share that you think is missing from the senior perspective, obviously we want to hear that from you. But it just because it wasn't included tonight doesn't mean that it's not included. It just means I couldn't keep you here until 11 sharing everything that we've been working through. And then to your first point on the shared data, I can resend the link or in the board recap that our office sends out or with the minutes can include the link to the existing conditions draft report on our website where you can download and look through all of the data that we've collected. We have had a lot of feedback on that data, so as part of our final report, that will be our first section and it will be updated, but the data is there live now that you can certainly look through before the final report is released, where the data will be a little bit updated based on the feedback that we've heard, but it's there and available for you if you'd like to look at it now.
That is on the borough president's website.
Yes, it's under the comprehensive plan tab at the top, but we can also make sure that you have the link to that page in the Borough Board follow-up email.
Thank you.
Chairperson Brown, Community Board 14.
Thank you, and thank you very much for your presentation. I just want to hone in on one aspect of your presentation, the data that was cited by the New York City Community Air Survey, the PM 2.5.
Mm-hmm.
You may not have the answer to this question, but I am curious about when that data is from and the validity of that. anecdotally, when the state was doing their own surveillance of Brooklyn, central Brooklyn was left out, and we have 3 truck routes. And so I urge you to understand that data more fully, and to validate its source, to make sure that what we're actually seeing in central Brooklyn with 3 truck routes is what you're basing your recommendations on. I understand in the north of the district, it makes a lot of sense. They have the BQE, we have trucking that's going through the BQE. But to sum it up, even more so through central Brooklyn, we have trucks that are stop and go. So it makes more sense that the heat, when I mean the higher PMs, might be in central Brooklyn. It seems more plausible to me. So I urge you to look at that data a little more closely when you're making your recommendations. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I'm definitely going to take that back and check this source and see if we can get some more information on that.
First Vice Chair Vanden Bosch of CB7.
Hi, thank you so much for this presentation and all of the analysis and you've been doing to put this together. Representing Community Board 7, I certainly saw what we know from being on the ground, which is especially in Sunset Park, the impact that the BQE and the truck traffic is having on sort of environmental issues and public health issues. And that's very clear in the map that you shared. And to that end, that means like finding creative solutions for freight. And I heard you bring up the IBX within a couple of separate contexts. And I just wanted to ask a clarifying question, which is the sort of vision to have the sort of IBX, is the Borough President's potential vision to have the IBX serve as the sort of a freight route that could be utilized by like car floats and get some of those trucks off the road, as well as passenger use?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
So we obviously, the Borough President's Office can't execute the construction of the IBX, but advocating for a rail line that can accommodate both freight and passenger is very important.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
Before I turn to, right on time, Chairperson McClure, we're going to do round 1s of questions before getting to a second round.
I'll be really quick. Not a question, Aaron. I just want to commend you and the Borough President's Office as a whole for this work. I think it's really important, and the focus on community health is paramount, and just look forward to this process continuing and CB6 being able to play a role in helping to elevate it.
Thanks, Eric.
Before I get to a second round of questions, would anyone else wish to ask a question who's not had a chance to do so before? Questions of Aaron Buchanan on the Brooklyn Comprehensive Plan from the Office of Brooklyn Borough President, Reynoso. Hearing no other first round questions. Second round, Chairperson Baptiste, Community Board 9.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Director Buchanan, again. I just want to kind of make sure. Well, actually, the question I have is there a draft document that we have so far? And I ask just because I know that we have the community conversations are supposed to be happening where sometime around this month. We're looking at recommendations in a town hall that would happen roughly in the May timeframe. And then I'm guessing we're going to be close to a final document in the June timeframe. I would suspect that there's not going to be a lot of opportunity for major, relooks at anything after that May timeframe. So it would be helpful for us to have that draft document, I guess, right about now. Is there something that is available that we'd be able to send to the board so we can actually distribute to our land use or our relative other committees as well?
Great, yes. So I mentioned at the end of the deck that we will have this link to the digital tool, which will have all of our draft recommendations in there. So that will be the document. It will be something that people can look through and fill out their feedback directly, and it will come to us. And so we hope to have that by the end of this week, and we can send that out to this list, and then we'll be sending it out to all of the boards individually as well just to make sure that everybody is receiving it at least several times to make sure it can get out there. And then in terms of what you can look through now, if you want to look at our accompanying existing conditions report, as I was mentioning with Ms. Scavo, is you can download that from our website now if you want to get a little more into the nitty-gritty of the data that is helping us arrive at these recommendations. And that can be kind of a, if you want to do some additional digging there, you can look at the data that's available now. But for sure, within the next week or so, we'll be sending out the link to the recommendations document so that you'll have well over a month before the town hall to be getting it out to your constituencies.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Aaron Buchanan, presenting on the comprehensive plan on behalf of the Office of Brooklyn Borough President, Reynoso? Hearing no other questions. Aaron, thank you very much for the presentation.
Okay, yeah, thank you all for your time. I'm really looking forward to hearing all of your boards and council districts' feedback on this, so I much appreciate it.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Our representative from the Civic Engagement Commission is on the call.
Thank you very much, Ms. Church, which brings us to the next agenda item, a presentation education workshop series from Benjamin Solitaire, Community Board Advisor for the New York City Civic Engagement Commission. As I said in presenting this, a familiar face. The floor is yours for a 10-minute presentation. We'll have questions from the Community Board. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, and my apologies for being late. It's been a pretty crazy day. I don't think I'll have a full 10 minutes. I just wanted to give a little update on some of what we're doing here at the Civic Engagement Commission. So far this year, we have, as of Thursday, we wrapped up our first two workshops about equity and land use with ANHD and accessibility, etiquette and protocols with the Mayor's Office of People with Disabilities. We have our last one of those on Thursday. I think they've both been really well received and very important to the work that everybody does out there on our boards. We will be ending the cycle with two more coming up in April and May, a series on fair housing and affordable housing by Housing Preservation and Development, just an update on their policies, their practices around those topics. And then we'll be doing some parliamentary procedure workshops again to wrap it up with hopefully centering on people who might want to be parliamentarians, the executive committees, and then of course just for the general boards to understand how we can run, you can all run smoother meetings. And then we recently sent a survey and some information about language access. We really wanted to get citywide, especially in Brooklyn, the language access practices you might have now and the needs that you might have. It's a really important thing for us to be able to implement. And so we wanted to understand citywide from each board what their current practices are, and again, what they need. That went to all the district managers a week or so ago. Came out of our hearing with the city council, if you remember, if you might have tuned into that. But we'll be able to take that data and then present it to different agencies and to our civic engagement partners and see how we might address some of those needs. We also cited information on our language line, which I know hasn't been greatly used, but it is a resource we provide to all boards. So if somebody comes to a district office and needs to have services in another language line is accessible to them to help facilitate those. And then I think the last thing for boards, and then I want to talk about participatory budgeting for a couple of minutes. We are going to want to start conducting some needs assessments and needs surveys with, again, citywide, but with your boards and with the borough president's offices so we can better understand what future trainings might look like, what future services, and how to best advocate for your needs as you all do your work. We know that there's a lot of surveys that get sent out and then maybe they get put aside. So we're hoping to sort of go through a process, maybe a survey, but mostly having conversations with you and board members about what challenges you face and how our agency can help. And if we can't help directly, how we can get other agencies also to help. We'll be reaching out to Carol Ann and to other borough presidents around the city to have those questions too, probably over the next several months, so that in the fall maybe we can start being able to implement some of those, some of what we learned. And then citywide participatory budgeting, the people's money is coming up for, you all just finished, or many of you, it's not citywide, but whoever had a council member that did it just finished the city council process, which is fantastic. I got to vote in District 39. But starting in mid-May and for the month through the end of June, everybody in the city who is 11 years old or older will have a chance to vote on projects in their borough. There'll be 5 borough ballots, and then there's 33 neighborhood ballots, which are all the tree neighborhoods or the equity neighborhoods that you might be familiar with. They were designated as hardest hit by COVID and suffering from other economic disenfranchisement. So if you live in one of those neighborhoods, you'll have 2 ballots to vote on, and if you don't, you'll have your borough ballot to vote on. This is the culmination of the first citywide process. Just quickly, in the fall last year, September, October, November, we had over 500 sessions citywide, talking to 12,000 New Yorkers, and ending up about 4,000 ideas from those processes. And then we spent 2 months with assembly borough committees with randomly selected representatives to match the demographics of the boroughs. So we had people apply. Each borough had about 100 people apply, and then we looked at a sortition process in order to randomly select those to represent their borough demographically. And they took those projects and ended up with the ballots that you're going to see. It was a really exciting process, and really deliberative discussions happened. And they ended up selecting the projects that'll be on the ballot. Of course, there'll be online voting, there'll be paper ballot voting, we'll be engaging partners around the city. We'll send all the boards information on how to promote it, either social media and or host a ballot box and or an event that could help help with the vote. So again, that's going to be about 6 weeks of voting for that process. So that's all really exciting. I think it'll be really exciting that for the first time anybody in the city can participate. We also, just as a CEC, we're going to be doing Democracy NYC. We're turning out the vote and getting people informed about the primary coming up. So keep an eye out for word from them. They'll be going to some of the key areas in the city to make sure people know all the key dates and how to go about with the political election that's coming up. And of course, as always, we'll be providing language translation services at select poll sites in languages not covered by the BOE, so that anybody who does not have a primary English speaker will have a chance to vote in that process as well. So there's a lot going on. We're really excited about the upcoming PV vote. I will be sending out, and if you took the land use workshop, you already hopefully got one, surveys just to get your feedback on the individual workshops, so we know how we're doing there and what to make better. We'll be sending them out after every workshop now for the attendees, so that we can hopefully make our trainings better. I think that's about it, but I'd love to answer any questions you have. Thank you so much for the time tonight, Carol Ann. Again, my apologies for being late, but it's always great to see a bunch of friendly faces. I obviously live in Brooklyn, love Brooklyn, so it's always good to be here.
Thank you. I will first raise a question in the chat regarding the CEC equity and land use workshops. Are the workshops recorded and available for viewing?
Yeah, once now that we finished them, give me a couple of days, but we will put them on our .gov site, the Civic Engagement Commission.nyc.gov. We'll send that out, that link, but that should have all of our workshops that were recorded and PowerPoints.
First Vice Chair Van den Bosch from CB7.
Hi, yes, thank you so much. I actually attended one of the accessibility workshops and I'm signed up for this Thursday. And it was fantastic, but one of the issues that came up was just some people, by the time it was announced, didn't have, their schedules were filled up for the specific times that were available. Will those workshops also be available as recordings because I think they're incredible. They were incredible. It was an incredible workshop I went to, and I think everyone would benefit from watching it.
Yeah, thank you so much. I found them very illuminating and very thought-provoking and useful indeed. Yeah, but yes, all those PowerPoints and recordings will also be posted on that same site. So again, we're waiting until the last one so we can post everything at the same time, but they'll be accessible and we'll make sure those links get shared. We try to make resources from every workshop we do end up on that site. So
great, thank you.
Any further questions for Benjamin Solitaire, the New York City Civic Engagement Commission regarding education workshop series and other updates? Hearing no further questions, Ben, thank you so very much for having been on and for having presented to us.
thank you so much. Always happy to be here, and I'll be sending out information about TV and all the workshops coming up. So look forward to talking to you all in the future. Bye.
Bye. So continuing on with the agenda, that brings us to a bylaws update. The bylaws update is, I'll frame the conversation. The bylaws conversation started with the January 2023 Borough Board meeting, where I presented a 1977 version of the Brooklyn, what would appear to be the bylaws of the Brooklyn Borough Board. For more context, the charter section that creates the Brooklyn Borough Board requires that we have bylaws. Some previous lack of clarity about whether we had them. The 77 discussion led to sort of ask you, the board, what did you want to do with them? Did we want to sort of recognize or authenticate them and proceed under them? Do we want to update them? We had an initial conversation about updating, and there was also a request that I authenticate them. At the February 2023 Borough Board meeting, a member suggested that I authenticate the 77 version by speaking to one of my predecessors as general counsel to the borough president, current New York State Senator Andrew Gennardis. I did that. In the conversation with Andrew, he suggested that he had, could not recall having ever discussed a 77 version of bylaws. He thought there might be a more recent one. That prompt led us to search through our records here a little more thoroughly. And then I uncovered through that search what appears to be a 2007 version of the bylaws of the Borough Board. That 2007 version was included in the email, the March 31st email that Carol Ann Church from our office circulated to all of you. Once again, the document that we found does not have anything that would on its face allow me to confirm its authenticity, but it sort of, again, appears to be authentic. It doesn't have what's often called a certificate, a secretary certificate or something, where we could see someone vouching for this as the copy of the bylaws adopted on such and such day. I do note that the footer of the document suggests that they were last amended on February 6, 2007. But this search leads us to, once again, bring before you all the question as to whether anyone has any reason to doubt the authenticity of the 2007 bylaws, or perhaps the better way of framing the question is, would you like to do members feel that they want to acknowledge this as the bylaws of the Borough Board and quiet any question as to whether they are in effect and sort of operate under them? That's the question. That's sort of how we got here. The same question. Essentially, we have a document that appears to be the bylaws of the Borough Board. What do we want to do about this document is essentially the question. Chairperson McClure, Community Board.
Just a quick question. I have not had a chance to do it myself, but I'm wondering how appreciably similar or different is the 2007 version to the 1977 version? Did much change?
Not too much. To sort of add a little more to that answer, Chairperson McClure, as I said as I gave the how we got here summary, one of the things you all had asked us to do here at Borough Hall is to take a look at the 77 version and note what needed to be updated. We sort of noted that only really one thing really needed to be updated, and that was sort of accounting for the fact that after, there no longer are council members at large. The 89 change to the charter addressed that. This version of the bylaws meets every requirement that we had noted. It eliminates that version. It has inclusive language, and it has a pretty modern and accurate sort of statement of the law. It seems pretty updated. I'm very happy to give a little more thorough reporter analysis similar to what I gave before, but from my review of it, it's pretty current in terms of where the city law stands. Chairperson Baptiste, Community Board 9. I cannot personally hear you.
I'm sorry. I believe Chair Camacho had his hand up before me. I'll defer to him first.
Thank you so much. Chairperson Camacho, Community Board 4.
Are we gonna amend it, or are you gonna send those over the way it is, or how, and with a new date on it, or what is it that we're requiring to do? Or just a feedback in regards to just having that there, because we have 77 and 2000 and so on. Are we gonna amend it, make any amendments, or are you gonna put 2023 and use that as we go along? I don't know what it is that you're trying to do.
Some question, Chairperson Camacho. Basically, yeah, what are we gonna do sort of works like this. The charter requires that we have bylaws. If there are bylaws currently in effect, we have to follow them. And if we want to change anything, we can amend. But before we get there, we have to figure that piece out. And in terms of figuring it out, does anyone have any reason to think that, the document is not authentic? Or does anyone have any more information on Borough Board bylaws? That's essentially what we're sort of talking about. And if, so in terms of options, we could either, one, try to just do it anew and say, we don't think that these are authentic, but I would want to hear why we don't think they're authentic. Or we could say, they look authentic to us, we're going to follow them, and then take it from there are basically the two options, if that makes sense, in my mind. But, this is an open discussion to see what folks want to do, and somebody puts a proposal on the table, we'll, vote on it, and we'll take it from there. That makes sense. Chairperson Baptiste, Community Board 9.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Mr. Chair. I think to that point, I'm not sure I'm not sure how many members are here. It's probably only a handful, if even that, who can verify the authenticity. I was just a baby at the time, so I couldn't say anything about it. It happened in 2007, but I think my question, and this is the same question I probably had with the earlier version, the 1977 version. I would just have a question as to are they sufficient and aligned with current regulations in terms of Are there any requirements in the city charter that are missing from the 2007 document? You know, I think we just want that kind of a review in terms of if there are any areas that are not, you know, where it's not sufficient. If we can get a heads up on that, we can make sure we include that as a pass. And then perhaps once we get that, I think then maybe the next step is, and it's something we can consider as a board, do we want to create a committee, you know, to review and recommend amendments possibly to the document? You know, so that way we could formally adopt the document as our working document.
Sounds like a proposal to me. If I understand what you are saying, you are making a motion to adopt the 2007 document as a working document. You know, requesting that we review the document to ensure there's legal sufficiency toward forming a committee to consider revising them. Do I have that right as to what you're proposing, Chairperson?
You read my mind every time, sir.
Okay. Is that so? There's a motion on the floor to adopt the 2007 document as a working document, to review it for legal sufficiency and adopt it toward forming a committee to review and propose changes to the bylaws. That is a motion on the floor. Does anyone second?
I'll make the second motion. Robert Camacho said before.
Camacho's motion is second. Does anyone object? Remember, if you object, you can just object on process grounds. Object on process grounds, we'll have a roll call vote. Which is not a threat, it's just required because this is action. We have to have. If it's unanimous, the record will say that. Anyone object? All right, hearing no objections, the motion is adopted. The 2007 copy of the bylaws are adopted as a working document. There will be a legal sufficiency review toward amended. Chairperson Scavo, you have your hand up. Committee Board 15, please.
I hate to admit it, but in 2006, the 1977 bylaws were put up as antiquated. In 2007, there was, I'm not 100%, but I think it was under Carlos Shakura, who came up with the new set of bylaws that were adopted in 2007.
So thank you, Chairperson Scavo. That would be a statement toward authenticating them, that they have been under the motion. They are adopted as a working document with the exception. We're going to do the legal, or we'll deal with the legal sufficiency review in a moment, but toward adopting. But thank you for that. That we'll note that in the record. Chairperson Scavo, Community Board 15. First, Vice Chair Vandenbosch of CB7.
Yes. Thank you. So there's sort of like the legal sufficiency, but then the other thing is I noticed that all meetings in Article 3, Section 5 have to be recorded by tape. And technically we could do that. Like maybe we want to update some around, you know, just to reflect the times that we're living in. So as part of that review, I'm wondering if those types of considerations can also be included.
Yes, the sufficiency review would look for example, amendments to the public officers law since 2007 that, to sort of just go ahead and preview that, the law changed since 2007 to require that things be video recorded. So that would be one of the things that we would have to flag for changing.
Great,
yes,
thank you.
Excellent catch. Any other question? Okay, any other questions from a member before I want to make a chair's motion to resolve one open question? And the question, the chair's motion would be, does the Borough Board once again want the Office of Brooklyn Borough President and the Council's office to conduct the legal sufficiency review of the 2007 bylaws. Anyone object to our doing that? Hearing no objection, we will conduct the review. Thank you all for that discussion and for that clarification. And thank you again, especially Chairperson Scavo, for authenticating the document, or giving us information toward authenticating it. Which now brings us on to the next agenda item of new business. At the new business phase, I had earlier during the updates segment of the agenda, Chairperson Baptiste of Community Board 9 said, wish to ask a question, and I said to hold off until this segment. So we'll begin with Chairperson Baptiste, CB9, and your question.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. If it was possible, I just wanted to get some updates. I think there were some items that we had touched on in a couple of meetings past. With regards to the City of Yes, I think we were looking to have the Department of City Planning to come and give some kind of a briefing to the chairs, as I think some of those text items are going to be coming up. Additionally, I think there was a question about 5G implementation, just understanding, getting some sense of where we currently stand. I think in my district, I know I've heard several different things in terms of the implementation or the rules around it. We want to get an understanding of, where they stand with that and how they're proceeding. And then I think there was a last question about loading zones. I'm not sure if there was an opportunity to look into that.
So I will go in reverse order. Loading zones, we did receive an update. The Department of the DOT advised us that they would not be responding to a request for a meeting because, in their view, the information about loading zones that information was provided in 2020. After having received that, and actually we just did follow up with this today, after they initially responded in March, we had a follow-up today. So, and to that end, they have provided information that I'm happy to circulate what the response was. Community Board 7's district manager, however, when we shared that response as CB7 and other community boards, obviously, as part of this meeting, made a request for a loading zone update. When we've shared with them CB7's point that in 2020, no public hearing happened because it was done remotely during the early parts of the pandemic. For the record, let me just double check the answer as to this body. For the record, so the CB7 request was made by Community Board 7. The charter provides as to community boards that they have the power to request that an agency show up. That's all it says, the power to request. And then there's a separate provision that says all city agencies have a duty to promptly furnish information necessary for a community board to do its work. DOT arguably complied with the information portion, but with the request, there's no demand that anyone show up. You can just make a request. So we advise CB7 that as the charter is written, they have to give the information. That's how it's been interpreted in at least one court case from 1994 by the highest court of New York, but there's nothing that requires that they attend. As I check the provisions as to the Borough Board, there is nothing in here that obligates an agency to attend. So this is just to flag where this lands ultimately. The point that there never was a public hearing is compelling. There obviously are questions that members of the public have. We will continue to surface that, but our advocacy is limited by the realities of the charter does not require them to ever attend certainly a meeting before this body, nor do they have to honor a request to attend. It's impolite. It's probably perhaps not quite in the spirit of democracy, but they don't have to do it. And at least the stated reason that I have been made aware of is DOT is reluctant to attend these meetings based on their statement that they have capacity problems as part of headcount and whatnot. So this is a long way of saying we'll reiterate the request for a public hearing where they have provided information about loading zones that we will circulate by email. Both by contrast, the House of Yes and 5G matters. I will personally follow up with them because the Office of Brooklyn Borough President's intergovernmental individuals out now on parental leave. So I'll assume responsibility for picking up on that thread and figuring out the answer on the House of Yes matters and the answer on the 5G implementation update. I'll pick that up, and then so I can directly give an update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Other new business. Yes. You guys a hand up?
Good
Judy
evening.
Granville, go ahead.
I was trying to wait for Miss Church, but I guess it's okay for me to just go ahead and speak.
Yes, it is.
I'm here this evening because we are planning a Veterans Appreciation Parade. And instead of only including 3 community boards as we did last year, we would like to include as many as possible. And we do understand that not every community board has a veterans committee, but we are going to ask for input from whomever is interested. If you have a veterans committee, that's fine. If you don't, but you have people who are interested, that's fine. We felt that because everybody is either related to a veteran or they know a veteran or they know somebody who was one, it would be a good idea to outreach through the community boards for the assistance and the input that we're looking for. We would like to get as much assistance and as much input as possible. You can help us with the planning of the logistics. And we also plan to do a resource fair at the end of the parade. The idea is to show our veterans that we appreciate their service and that we are going to make as much information available to them as possible in terms of the services that they deserve. So that is basically why we are attending the meeting this evening. And we hope to get as much input as possible. And at this point, we are looking to have a meeting before the end of April. The actual parade date we're looking for is October 28th, which would make it a kickoff to a month long of veterans activities, because as you know, Veterans Day is actually in November. But we don't want to conflict with any of the existing parades at this point. And I think if Mr. James is on, if I've left anything out, he'll let me know.
Thank you, Ms. Granville. Is there a follow-up from Mr. James?
I think Mr. James was having a problem with his audio, so that's probably why you have not heard him. But we did not want to let this opportunity go past to get a chance to address everybody on the Borough Board at one time.
Thank you, Ms. Granville. Ms. Granville, do you have any sort of anything like a link or anything, other information that could be, sent to us to distribute to the other Borough Board members? Anything like that?
I think I was under the impression that something had been sent out once before, but if you didn't receive anything, we will make sure that you do see something in writing so that you have something to actually look at and discuss with your members.
Excellent. I'll send you my email just so you can send it to me, just in case. Thank you. Other new business. Going once. Going twice. Okay. I think I now need to entertain Chairperson Baptiste's objection to adjourning the meeting. Let's hear your motion. No, all joking aside, see, this month I got you. So does anyone object to adjourning the meeting before I'll make this note? Our next Brooklyn Borough Board meeting would be Tuesday, May 2nd, 2023, 6 p.m. Very likely the same format. If anything should change, we'll let you know. With that having been said, especially for anyone observing, happy holidays. And otherwise, if no one objects, we are adjourned until then. Thank you, and have a very good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.